Hello, and welcome to Reawakening the Sacred Self, deepening our connection with our authentic soul. Where we have gathered together Indigenous elders, wisdom keepers, spiritual teachers, healers, and inspirational speakers to share their wisdom and insight as to how we can integrate our spiritual practices more deeply in our everyday lives, thus deepening our connection with our authentic soul. My name is Frances Billinghurst. I'm your host for and the creatrix of this event, and I'm coming to you from Kaurna country here in South Australia. As such, I acknowledge the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians of the lands upon which I reside. So Manina Padni, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I am delighted to welcome Linda Starwolf. Thank you, Starwolf, to being part of this event.
Thank you.
And for anyone who is not familiar with her work, Starwolf, who has a PhD, has been a shamanic visionary teacher and guide to thousands of people all over the world for the last 4 decades. She was an internationally certified alcohol and drug counselor for some 30 plus years and has studied a variety of breathwork techniques with many teachers. Starwolf draws much of her wisdom from personal experience of using breath to fortify connection to one's own life force energy. The author of some 13 books, which I hope we can discuss in a moment, Starwolf is the creator of Shamanic Breathwork, the Shamanic Healing Initiatory Process, or SHIP, SHIP, the founder of the non-profit organization Venus Rising Association for Transformation, and founding president of Venus Rising University for Shamanic Psycho-Spiritual Studies. She is also the co-founder of Shamanic Mystery Tours and guides spiritual seekers to travel as missionaries to sacred shamanic sites worldwide. Dedicating her life to assisting soul seekers to transform and embrace their lives, Starwolf teaches how to embody the shaman within and step into a life of passionate soul purpose. Her commitment to sacred activism and a visionary leaderhood led her to create the Shamanic Ministers Global Network, and she trains shamanic breathwork practitioners from all around the world, including here in Australia and also in New Zealand, which is fantastic. Starwolf has a deep connection to shamanic earth wisdom teachings originating from Indigenous elders. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Twyla Nishk, beloved Seneca Wolf clan grandmother, gave her name Starwolf and adopted her as a spiritual granddaughter. And Starwolf's life passion and purpose is to support personal transformation and planetary consciousness of love and wisdom, one breath at a time. And I feel this is something that we all need in this modern age. So thank you, Starwolf. And your presentation today is Awakening the Aquarian Shaman Within. So I thought what would be a good place for us to start our discussions is for you to share a little bit more about your background, and in particular, what brought you to this path of shamanic breathwork.
Well, I think when I think of my spiritual roots and being a little girl growing up in Western Kentucky, really the South, in deep South in many ways, and going to the Baptist church every Sunday as a little girl, was very close to Jesus, I still am, to the Christ energy, and I also very close to the fairies and to the ETs because my grandmother from the old country, from Europe, her family that had come over to the United States, were devout Christians and very devout believers in the fairies and the wee little people and all those kinds of things. And all those reasons, probably a lot of us in past lives got burned at the stake. However, as an only child, my grandmother was very protective of me, and I was there all day when my young parents worked and just lived about a mile down the road. And my grandparents had a great farm, raised our food. We had animals, the chickens, the rabbits, everything. And so my summers, from May until at that time you didn't go to school till September. From May to September were spent barefoot. Now they call it earthing, but we was barefoot, and until I was about 8 or 10, topless, and you know, with the rainwater in my hair creating curls, which it does, and the trees and the forest and all the creatures. And that was my first beginning with just, we call it so many things now. And, I talk about shamanism, and it's true, and earth wisdom. But for me, it was being connected to nature, to the elemental world, and to my grandmother, who still had those elemental roots and had no conflict between Jesus on Sunday and and the fairies on Monday. And so that was wonderful, and it also got me in trouble as an innocent little girl speaking about these things in school or in church or Sunday school, or and I was strong-willed, so I kind of argued with some of these adults who didn't seem very smart. So I've been in trouble a lot in my life with those kinds of things. I'm a Sagittarian with a lot of Aquarius energy, so I was just bound to get in trouble, you know. But as I grew older, it was the 60s and the 70s, and that's when all heaven and hell broke loose in the United States. And that's when the assassinations happened of some of our great leaders. And it's when in college, as I was studying to be, of course, a social worker and a therapist, it's when we were marching in the war, in the protest of the unjust wars. So it was very, very similar to what's happening here in the United States now, or the ununited states, I might say, and worldwide. It was very, very similar. So I try to remember that when I get despaired a little bit. And I go, okay, take a deep breath. We've been here before. And it's not a linear path. It's not a circular path. It's a spiral path. And so that's the basis of my teachings, is that it is a spiral path, that we're elemental beings, like the trees that lose their leaves, like the animals that shed their fur, and the birds that molt their feathers, and that we go through those cycles over and over again. And hopefully, just like everything else around us, that we learn and we grow from it. So that's, there's been many teachers. You've already spoken about grandmother. Twyla is my adopted grandmother, who's on the other side now. 94 years is when she left, when she was 94. And my incredible breathwork teachers from all around the world, some of them very famous: Stan Groff, Leonard Orr, Jacqueline Small. I have had so many beautiful teachers. I don't want to leave them all out, but it's impossible to name them all. I've always been someone, even though I'm an only child and be a little robust and a little mouthy, I think I know it all sometime, I have had the good sense to know that I don't. And I've had the humility to go to those wise elders and say, grandmother, grandfather, will you teach me? And to be respectful and to learn the medicine in a good way, and to never call myself a master. I still don't really. We'll say, boy, there's a master practitioner or this or that, or breath work, but I don't consider myself like an ascended master or guru. I'm just, there's a song that says, I'm just another poor slob trying to find my way home to God, and doing my part, hopefully, as best as I can, one day at a time.
No, wonderful. And thank you for sharing. And definitely can resonate. I feel that we are perpetual students. And yes, anybody can actually be a teacher to us, especially when we're walking this path, regardless of what side of the fence we're in. So thank you very much for sharing that. So what a wonderful upbringing as a child. And you did mention something which I think is very important for us to all keep in mind in these days of great change. we've gone through this before. It's a little bit different, but we, everything, as you said, is cyclic. And if we get into that understanding and sort of breathe and lean into that, it will pass. We just need to sort of focus on moving ourselves forward. So I would like to now sort of talk about this wonderful topic that you wanted to share with us, the Aquarian shaman and the breath work. So let's start off with, what exactly is an Aquarian shaman or Aquarian shamanism? And what, if any, initiations do people need to go through in order to become an Aquarian shaman?
I would begin by saying some things that the Aquarian shaman is not. It's not, the second coming. It's not the everybody is suddenly awake. In fact, I think it means that we plummet into the darkness. That the Aquarian, the shaman path has always been a path of death and rebirth, and a recognition of what needs to die inside of us, not others, but what needs to die and to transform and to let go inside of us. And that is a unique ability, instead of pointing the finger at everybody and everything else in the whole world or beyond, or to the aliens or whatever. To be able to say, what inside of me needs to transform? So therefore, what do I need to consciously let die, or even take action to kill it off? And that's not about killing off our self-love or our sacred path or, those kind of things. But sometimes, we outgrow, and it feels unfortunate, but sometimes and I believe it's destined, we outgrow certain places, certain things, certain addictions, and sometimes certain relationships, which can be very painful, all those things. And the longer that's hence my came to addictions naturally. I didn't just become an addictions counselor because I think I'll become an addictions counselor. It was because anything I've let go of has claw marks all the way across it, But I gave it the good fight until I said, okay, I get it. I'm addicted to this. I need to let it go. So the Aquarian shaman for me is, I'd like to say harmony, peace, love, and understanding. And I would say, well, that's 50%, maybe. I love harmony, peace, love, and understanding. The other 50 cents is screaming, crying, throwing up, clawing, kicking, cussing all the way. Home, ho, ho, ho. So part of what I try to teach people, both in the addictions field, both in my counseling programs that I've done, and I don't do much counseling anymore, occasionally an old student, mainly I teach and teach other people how to step into their own ability to teach others is what I do. And so with that, the first thing I say is, I'm not your shaman. I know that I'm shamanic through and through, always have been. I also know you are too. And I believe that the whole world is shamanic, which means the word shaman that originally came out from Siberia. It wasn't pronounced shaman, it was pronounced differently. I never know if I say it right, some Hine, whatever. But it meant, roughly translated, excited energy. It meant energy that was sped up and that moved things, changed things, excited energy. And I can't think of anything more exciting than excited energy that helps me change and transform my life. And the Aquarian shaman, of course, for me, is to hold that higher vision of what we can be, perhaps, on a good day, and maybe even on a bad day occasionally. And maybe that in time, human beings, if we have enough of these deaths and rebirths, we might actually have some ascension possibility. Right now, there's a lot of descension going on But that's okay too, because what I say to people is in order to shoot the arrow, you must pull it back first and shoot for your target with consciousness. And you can't go forward without going backward, taking review of what needs to happen. So the Aquarian shaman for me, it's not something I can ordain you as. It's not something I can wave my magic wand and you are. It's something that awakens inside of all of us a desire for peace, love, harmony, and understanding. And what do I need to do to change myself? What parts of me do I want to grow and fertilize and to produce the beautiful fruits in my own life that I can share with others? And how is it that I can encourage others and hold non-judgmental space, but strong space for people to find the discipline that they need within to go through these initiations, because that's what they are. Changes are initiations. So the Aquarian shaman is not just woo-woo, although I love woo-woo. You know, it's more like whoa, whoa, you know. The Aquarian shaman is hard work. It's dedication to walking. It says on the front of the book, I don't know if this is the right direction for you, but it says, walking the spiral path of transformation. But I figured it would sell more copies if I said Aquarian shaman. But, you know, I say that joke, partly joke and partly truth, is I've always felt this calling to shapeshift my own consciousness and to be a better human being. And I see so many people wanting to heal and wanting to give back to the world. And in a nutshell, that's really what the Aquarian shaman is. So I've taught about it for years. And I believe, even though I've been writing about it for 15 years, maybe longer, and out of all the books that I've written since I first thought of this one, the fact that this one came out now is no accident for me. It could have come out literally 15 years ago, maybe longer. But that it's out now, there's something very synchronistic about that for me, and I didn't even think about it at the time.
No, wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing. And yes, I'd like to talk a little bit more about your book in a moment, but just sort of like coming back, I liked how you reminded us that, I mean, shamanism or anything of sort of soul discovery isn't all love and light. It's like when we dive deep inside of us, there are a lot of tears. And you said howling and screaming and anger and frustration. And sometimes you feel like you're going one step forward and 4 steps back or going nowhere at all. But that's part of the whole process of going to the deepest darkness, and then we transcend to emerge again, changing our consciousness and coming into a place where then we can share our experiences and guide other people through their dark nights of the soul, or when the world goes into its own dark cycle as well. So you're going to say something to Esther?
I was just going to say all of the world's major religions are based upon shamanism, you know, and the one I know most closely, although I have studied Buddhism and Hinduism and many different paths, Wicca, many different paths. But they're all based on death and rebirth. And, you know, Jesus was just Jesus. He didn't become JC until he died and was born again, you know. And if you look at Inanna and her journey into the underworld, she didn't become Inanna, queen of heaven and earth. She was the queen of heaven, but she was not the queen of heaven and earth until she went into the underworld to meet her dark shadow, Ereshkigal, her sister. And those myths are all true, by the way, whether they're true literally or archetypally, they are true maps for consciousness. And so those deep dives into the underworld, even though we fear them, we're anxious about them, we avoid them, we go into addiction to get away from it, they eventually catch up with us willingly or unwillingly, we will have to face the darkness at some point. Even if it's not till our last breath on the bed when we leave, we will. And I love what Ram Dass used to say, and I was close to him several times in my life, in real life, in the physical world. And he said, you know, you must learn how to die before you die. Then it'll be a breeze, he said, you know. And I think that probably the biggest graduation and ascension we have is when we drop this body and go into the next worlds, or next incarnations or union or whatever that looks like. But until then, we're practicing this great adventure of consciousness, is what it really is. This incredible opportunity. Grandmother Twyla of the Wolf Clan Nation told me, she said, if you could see what I see, she said, I see things on the other world all the time. And she said, I know you do too. She said, but the closer you get to the other side, you see them more clearly. And she said, there's a huge line, like at a football game, of beings standing in line to get a ticket to come to Earth, a lottery. And I was like, really? They want to come here? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, and why is that, Graham? I mean, it's beautiful here. It's a beautiful Earth, but there's so much pain and suffering. Surely there's planets where it's different. She said, oh, yes, there are, but there's none that teach love and compassion and forgiveness as much as this planet does. She said, there's a tremendous amount of dark here, but there's equal amounts of light, like the sun and the moon. And this planet is the perfect shamanic planet for spiritual growth. And so I got it. When she said that, it just rang true for me. And I started viewing things differently. And I started really appreciating the beauty in suffering, not an addiction to suffering, like being an addict and just staying in it. But I just appreciated, first of all, I appreciated my own brave little spirit who said, I'll go. That looks like fun. I appreciated her and her innocence and her willingness to come. And I appreciated everybody else too. And, you know, even the people who've played out the shadows for me in my life, or who I've played out for them. And I began to begin to touch on, you know, the beginning of learning about unconditional love for myself, for others, and for our planet, you know, for the world. You know, do we look at, you know, a tornado or hurricane or an earthquake, or, you know, a fire started by lightning? Do we look at those things as evil? Or do we look at those things as acts of nature that somehow happened and that perhaps they were destined to happen for some sort of purification? And then we have every one of those elements inside of us. And it can be terrifying and scary and depressing and anxiety producing, or joyful or happy or exhilarating. But whatever we're feeling and whatever we're experiencing, I've taken out the words good and bad and said, these are shamanic times. That's shorthand, like it's hitting the fan.
Oh, thank you very much for that. And you touched on my next question, which I was going to ask you about how we can sort of use these shamanic conscious practices to transform our planet. But I think the most important one is this understanding. She said, take out good and bad. I even take out sort of, in a way, negative and positive, because that's sort of feeling the same as well, because they just are the acts of nature. And I think the reason where we put these labels on them is because we are just looking immediately to us and how we are affecting, as opposed to the greater scheme of things. And I do think we're, especially in our modern age, we are increasingly becoming very much I am and me, as opposed to our connection to the wider, to the wider planet, our wider community. I'm just wondering if you want to say anything more about, how the breath work and the shamanic practices can help us remember that we are part of a wider play in things. It's not always about us.
Mm. The first thing that really comes to me is that I think the layering that happens from the time we're born, whatever our birth process is like, we know that has an impact on it informs how we do change or don't. And then, of course, certainly our, childhood and growing up and the factors, the light and dark of all of that. It's always in everybody's childhood. Some cases very extreme, either direction or the other. But everybody has, their family of origin. We call it FOO, 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 foo on you, that everybody has their family of origin stuff. And I said stuff instead of the other word I could have said. But anyway, they have it. Every human has that. And 99.9% of everybody has some denial about that. Oh, it was wonderful, or oh, it was all awful, whatever. There's actually 50 shades of a shamanic way to grow up, and there's no justification for child abuse ever in the human realm, but in the shamanic realm, I have to believe that there is a bigger plan for all of us. If I didn't, I'd just off myself and wouldn't be here. I couldn't live that kind of cruelty. No, I've had to learn for myself the horrible things in my life have made me actually a better person for working through them, and have caused me to have a lot more love and compassion and wicked sense of humor and understanding than I would have ever had without those experiences. I don't wish them on anyone, but I know that we have them. So automatically, from the moment we get here, they say we're born in sin. What I would say is we're born in with screwed up other people. Sin actually means to miss the mark. So it's kind of like, maybe we're being headed for another planet and ended up here. I don't know. But so we're born into things that are going to happen. Maybe karmic, maybe not, whatever. But I remember Grandmother Twyla saying, this is our school. This is where we're learning. And as those lessons come in, we may not get them right away because we go into repression or acting out or regression, all those things. So we have family of origin, and then we look around the world and whatever conditioning that we're having. And for those of you who've studied family of origin and shadow work, you know that we have a wonderful apparatus in us that allows us to completely forget and shove it over in the corner. My husband always leaves the shoes right over the door where I'm going to fall over them. And I say to him, I'm going to fall and break my hip if you leave those there. And he'll like, okay. And he'll move them over. And then I'll come over a few days later and I'll fall over them again. And he's like, I just can't. I'm like, what is the shadow here? But these shoes at the door, it just set them over 2 feet. That's all you have to do. It's like a shadow dance we have. I don't know. It's like a power struggle. He wants to put his shoes here so he can just step right into them when he goes out. I'm going to step out because I don't watch where I'm walking. I'm going to fall and break my neck. So it's just, it's a power struggle. This is kind of a silly one, but it could cause some major damage, Sometimes we're not aware of our shadows. We'll say, well, that person has a shadow, right? We can see the, politicians' shadows. But how am I like that in some way, So to be able to see family of origin patterns we took on as a child to survive, shadow stuff that we pushed away so that we would be loved and accepted and follow other people's, paths until we come to a place where we can individuate some and begin to say, who am I really? Usually through some sort of catastrophic event or heartbreak. We usually won't look at family of origin and shadow issues. I won't certify anybody, Frances. I won't certify or train anybody into shamanic breath work who will not come through our healing program first. You know how you see all these things popping up? Come be a breath worker, 5 times online, and now you're a breathwork facilitator. And I'm like, no, don't do it. No. Or if you do it, don't do it for anybody else. You know? So it's like, no. The first thing that I learned is healer, heal thyself. And so to do the family of origin work, food, I call it the FOO, family of origin, the gift that keeps on giving, and shadow work, right? To do those things, like you can see, I have a wicked sense of humor, and you have to have that in this field to survive. But to do that work so that you can open the heart, that you're loving from love, not codependency and addiction, and that you're not willing to live in an addictive lifestyle, that you're willing to continue to grow into your own light, true light of your being. And the way that I know how to do that best is to connect people with those shadow parts, with that childhood energy, and to open their hearts to themselves, to heal themselves first and ongoing always. And then they're going to be able to be safe containers for other people. They're going to have a little bit of knowledge about how to handle situations with people and encourage, instead of repressing people because they don't know how to deal with it themselves. A lot of therapists do that because they haven't done their own work. And I don't mean to be hateful about it. It's just true. And, it's, yeah, doctors too, medical people too. So, but anyway, just kind of the outcome of that for me is by doing that inner work, and to then, just because you do a big house cleaning doesn't mean that you never have to clean again. I've been doing some inner work for myself just recently about some forgiveness that I need to forgive some other people around some things, and just not wanting to, didn't want to forgive them. But I know that it hurts me, and energetically it probably hurts them in some way. So even though I'm not really in touch with them. So the spiral path is ongoing, and doing the inner work is the shadow work. It is the shamanic work, and it's the way to the heart. The Aquarian shaman listens to their heart, not sappy, just kind of love stuff, but listens to the heart. And the heart always says, have courage. Take courage to live in your truth and to discover who you are and be who you really are in the world.
Oh, no. Thank you very much for sharing that, because you've made some really important points. In particular, this journey, regardless of whether we're doing shamanic work or any sort of diving into ourselves, it's not a one-stop visit. It's almost like, and I've said this with other people, it's like an onion, really, or even that's not a good analogy, because we're just merely touching the surface. And you did mention it's like connecting with the earth, and each time we go around the seasons, something else will emerge, or we'll get triggered. And the reasons why we get triggered is because there's something within us that needs to be addressed or dealt, or we just need to even just sit with. And we can't do it. This weekend, I've done my shadow work. I'm all good. Next, please.
That's a real key, that probably not really done much shadow work.
But we're in a society where it's all very instant, and
Yes.
we're seeing that now with practitioners coming through. And I would like to believe that they are wanting to share the knowledge, which is fantastic. But as you said, until you've actually done the work,
Right.
you really, how can you? And I've had this experience myself where I did a course in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and the very first client, a test client that I had, did not fall into line, shall we say, as to what I was taught. So I reached back to my teacher saying, how do I do it if people aren't visual or can't use the prompts that I was taught to get the result? And I was just told to try harder. And it's just like,
Ah,
there's no such thing as one size fits all. I think that in analogy, that's what I learned from that, going, okay, I'm going to have to and sort of expand my own understanding, my own teachings for myself to when I get people who don't fit into this box to see how, what's else in my toolkit to assist them or to make them sort of help them through whatever they are wanting assistance with.
Yeah, my teachers taught me that it hurts the work when, you put on high heels when you're a little kid and you just about fall and break your neck. It hurts the work when you step into shoes that are bigger than what you're ready to step into. It hurts other people, and eventually, of course, it hurts you. And, I appreciate the great awakening that's happening around the world and people being so enthusiastic about wanting to learn breath work and all kinds of holistic and integrative and shamanic healing. I think that is fabulous. I think all the books coming out, all the trainings and different things that are there are wonderful. What concerns me is that the trend to fast food consciousness, and just like fast food is empty of any true nutrients. It may have a little bit of protein, but it may be poisoned protein, from how the creatures were created or treated or whatever, or the sprays or chemicals that are on it. So there's a fast food consciousness in our world. And I'm not against AI. I use it sometimes for some editing purposes instead of actually needing to ask somebody else around editing. But I have deep concerns about AI and how it will be used on this world. Just like the nuclear capacity. I understand, quote, it was created to create peace, so there would never be. And yet there was a nuclear bomb just dropped recently, that nobody's even really talking about. So I think that there's some things that do not need to be created. That's it's like my grandmother used to say to me, don't tell everything you know. So, because I would just tell everybody everything when I was little, and my grandmother was like, honey, there's some people that don't want to hear some of the things you're saying. You don't need to tell everybody everything you know. So I think that it's important at this time for people who are questing and really wanting to become master teachers to do so. To find the masters that are out there, like I did. And they said, well, I can't find it. Are you crazy? When I found the master teachers I found, there was no internet. Nobody had a computer. I still had a phone with a cord attached to it. And I found Grandmother Twyla on the reservation through a dream, through the dream time, and then talking to someone. And then talking to a woman who was Cherokee that lived in Kentucky, where we became friends. And she said, I think it might be this person. And then she got a phone number from an older gentleman, I think it was, that was a chief and then they gave me the phone number, and then I called, and then I went up and I got on a plane, and I rented a car, and I drove out into the reservation, and the people there gave me dirty looks, and I didn't know where I was, and I had to sleep in my car because it was pouring down rain and I couldn't see, and I almost ran off the dirt roads. There's a journey to be had. There's a journey there's test along the way. And then there's listening to those elders, asking respectfully if they will share their medicine, and the appropriate honoring around that and the connection. And then always, no matter how many years ago, still speaking their names instead of, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And like I've just was dropped on the earth in this way, And it's like, yeah, I was dropped here, I think, as a shamanic being, and I was always a little weird and strange and destined, but the people that loved me into being and that held my heart and helped me heal and transform my life and pass their medicine to me, the very least I can do is mention their names and to be respectful and to walk in their footsteps while learning through years of doing this work that I have something also now as an elder that's uniquely mine to contribute to that lineage. And that's the way it works. You know, the Aquarian shaman is not for everybody to pop up suddenly of I've read Star Wolf's book and I'm a shaman. I will go out and burn my own books if they do that. This is telling you how to do that, that we're elemental, how to go to your heart and your own medicine chest, how to work with nature. It has those kinds of guidelines of how to do that. And it talks about meeting Grandmother Twyla, you know, and not just her, but other teachers and how everything becomes your teacher. I spent so many years in breathwork school, not 2 weeks. I must have gone to 20 or 30 weeks in different combinations. And then I became an apprentice after that. You know, so I just, I do believe that things speed up. And I do believe that people can, because of the work that some of us elders have done, get it quicker. But there is a trajectory on that path. And it demands respect and humility.
No, thank you very much for sharing and reminding us. And it's almost too, especially in your journey, that it was the journey in itself too, which was the great initiation, and testing your courage, testing your tenacity, testing your desire to receive or seek these teachings. And that in itself is something that cannot be underestimated in our, you know, our seek for finding the right teacher as well. It's not just, as you said, the medicine, the knowledge that we receive, it's the journey of our own self in preparation for it. And then how do we respect that knowledge once we've received it? And as you said, again, it's an ongoing journey for all of us.
I think that people disrespect their teachers when they behave in a certain way, let's put it that way, and they disrespect themselves and the medicine that they've been given. And I'm not saying that people are bad. I think they're enthusiastic. I think they're excited. I think they're wanting, they know that something's wrong with the world and they want to make the changes. Maybe they're even scared, you know. But I also think a lot of it has to do with our modern world that says, get it, do it fast, you know, and it'll be better. The quicker it can be, the better it is. The faster it can be, the better it is. The easier it is, the better it can be. And I think it's wonderful when things are quick and fast and easy sometimes. Hallelujah. And equally, when it takes time and there's soul initiations and you are tested to find the strength and the wisdom and the forgiveness and the kindness and the compassion, all of that within yourself. And you realize it's not only in your teachers, but it's also inside of you.
And sometimes it can take many years for that understanding, especially on a deeper level, to come into our own sort of conscious awareness as well. I mean, I look back on my own life going, I may not be in communication these days with a past teacher, but what they've taught me has been foundational to where I am now. So yes, it's appreciating the good, the bad, and the unusual as we move through life. Starwolf, unfortunately, we are running out of time. I do want to sort of, I know you've mentioned it briefly, your book, The Aquarian Shaman. This is your 13th book, if I understand correctly. And also it came out last year. So you've talked a little bit about it, as its subtitle is Walking the Spiral Path of Transformation. You did say it has some sort of exercises, has a little bit of your backstory in it as well. And it was one book that you were sort of seemed to be writing in between all the other books that came out.
It's
But
true.
I love it how it sort of come out at a time where I said we're all going through this great change. And so it's obviously needed to be birthed now as opposed to 13 years ago or whenever you started writing. So is there something else that you can share of the book, especially as it is going through these times of change and people are, I think that they're searching for stability in a world of change, which is almost
Mm.
impossible. So how can we sort of embrace this Aquarian shamanic spiral a little bit better? Are we able
Mm.
to?
Well, my answer to everything is to breathe. I've been teaching and learning breath work, you know, for over 40 years. And the breathing, what it does, doing the breathing exercises, for me, I call mine shamanic breath work, which is the one that emerged out of the breath work trainings and things after many years of bringing shamanism and breath work together. That's in that breathing that something's activated that's, I would call the shaman within, the Aquarian shaman. And I believe it's what's always activated shamans throughout eons is working with the singing, the chanting, the drumming, the breathing, that to put themselves into altered states so that they could see the bigger picture of what was going on and find the solutions for themselves, others, the tribe, whatever. And so to me, this is when this needed to be born. I didn't plan it this way. I really didn't. Maybe my soul did, my psyche didn't, my human self didn't. But I think that this is a book for our times. And many people have, it just came out, I did a big article on Indie Shaman on me in the UK and giving away a book and all this kind of stuff for people. Just really cool. But anyway, I was like, wow, it's just like growing all over the world right now. It's very Aquarian. It belongs to the world. And so for me, it's the breath work and the Aquarian shaman are interfacing each other, of bringing people back to their hearts, back to their medicine heart chest, back to the sacred breath, remembering who they really are, having the humility to ask for help, and also wanting to step into their sacred purpose. And I really didn't get into that much, but doing that other work is so we can remember who we really are and what our contribution is to be here right now. We're not here by accident. We're here on purpose. And if we are, everybody, and I'll just say the last thing here. In my book, you'll see people in that book, I call them Aquarian shaman, who's an actor, a person who takes people to Peru, someone else who ran an addiction center. It's people of, a woman as a nurse practitioner, all walks of life, all different outfits, all different ways of presenting themselves. And that is, for me, the new dispensation, that each of us, regardless of what paths we're on, can embrace this energy and help to create that Aquarian world that I dreamed about as a teenager.
Yes, and I think a lot of us are dreaming about that as well. And I also understand that you have a wonderful free offering for our audience, which is a spiral meditation. Can you speak a little bit about that meditation? Is that connected to the work that you do on the shamanic breath work?
Yes, and I helped put some of this music together a long time ago with my good friend when the people were first learning how to do that sort of thing. And he said, you have to put that in your books. You have to get that music out to everybody because it was so powerful. And he had collected shaman sounds and nature sounds all over the world and put them together to make this beautiful meditation and music. And it's a way to sit and to listen or to lie down in bed, put your eye mask on, whatever, and to just say your prayers and do whatever it is that you need to do, and to do some breathing on your own and to see what comes and to call upon your higher power, your spirit guides, and perhaps call upon the Aquarian shaman within you.
No, wonderful, and thank you very much for that gift, which people can find listed below this recording, as well as your website, where they can look at all your books and the courses that you're offering. And do you have anything coming up that you may want to give a shout out, or anything specifically online for people to jump in? 'Cause I know you teach all around the world.
We have once a year, some people say, I'm not well, or I can't, I have 3 kids at home, or whatever. And I really want to do your training. I don't know how I'm ever going to do your training. We do a 2-week training once a year online, starting February 17th through March 2nd. Our online SHIP, Shamanic Healing Initiatory Process. That's our first level of training, that you can do the training, which is your healing. And of course, healing's ongoing, but a big piece, working with us and a group of other people from around the world to do your own healing. And you have 6 breathwork sessions online and 6 process groups during that time. That is our first level of training. You can find out about the other trainings online, about our advanced training and that sort of thing. If you do complete that training and do your own healing, we're a ministerial board, and we will honor you by ordaining you as a shamanic minister. If you decide to go on for shamanic breathwork certification, then you can find out about that. But we don't even consider you for shamanic breathwork certification if you're not willing to do SHIP. So that's our stand. And that takes place 7 to 11, 4 hours a day. It's a big commitment for 2 weeks, 7 to 11 at night in the United States. So I don't know how that works out for Australia, but what at the time zone is, but, and then we have lots of programs in person here at our mountain, our retreat center here. And I have to mention that we were just in Egypt in December. That we were in Costa Rica in December. We were in Egypt in November, but we'll be taking another group, and we have, I think, 3 spaces left for the most magical trip that we do, which is taking people to the pyramids and to all of the sacred sites there. So jump on board if you want to do that. And we do breath work in the King's Chamber in Egypt.
A really special experience itself. So again, all the details about these upcoming events will be found on the website, which is listed below. And before we wrap everything up, Starwolf, I'm just wondering if you have a message or a thought to share for our audience, especially in these current times.
I find it hard to believe that there's anyone who's even vaguely awake or conscious at any level, that there's anybody that's really not feeling the urge. And they may not know what it is. But it could be a feeling of discontent. It could be some fear, especially with some of the things going on politically here on my side of the world. But globally, especially with the environment, that affects everyone. And I think that we're like, we human beings are animals. And we're part animal, and we're also part tree, and, part all of everything. But I think like the other sentient beings on this planet that are older and wiser than us, they can all feel it when a storm is coming. They can feel it when, the birds will disappear, the rabbits will run and hide, the trees will you can see them kind of stand a little straighter and become a little more flexible, those kind of things, that we too can feel the elemental world right now that's happening, the big changes that's wanting to happen all around the world. And I believe, regardless of what politicians do or don't do, that most people really want to see things change in a really good way. And so I would say that right now, the biggest thing that I really want to encourage people to do is to take care of themselves, to really nurture themselves, to find out what truly nurtures and heals them, to come close to their tribes. If they don't have a tribe, find one. And open up to what's your special sacred purpose during this time and your contribution that will give you a place to be grounded while you're watching all the changes and witnessing this major death and rebirth that we're going through. And I believe that, like me, if you do that, that Aquarian shaman is going to find a peace inside in the midst of the turmoil of knowing that whatever happens, that I'm a creature of love and occasionally some wisdom, and that I'm doing what I can. That's my part. And that's all I can do. And with that, I can let go and trust the process.
No, wonderful, wonderful words of advice. And yes, it's sort of like being still, looking within, and finding that sort of place of love and peace. And then we can project that out as opposed to everything else that's happening in the world. So thank you, Star Wolf, for sharing your divine wisdom with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure and very inspiring to have you here.
Well, thank you, Frances, for having me here. And I'm just reaching through the screen energetically to give you a big hug and feel like we could be sisters. Thank you for all the good work that you're doing and bringing so much love and consciousness to the planet. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to be doing more than what you're doing. So thank you.
You're more than welcome. And thank you very much for your kind words. And once again, to everybody who's watching this, to find out more about Star Wolf's work, to find her books, her online teachings, and even her in-person teachings, go to the link below this recording and you'll be taken to her website. And I'd like to wish you all, Natalia, thank you. I hope you have enjoyed this discussion as much as I have, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Blessings.